Maybe you are sitting with the quiet, persistent ache of believing that your internal world is simply too loud for the people around you. You carry the weight of a heavy iron ring in your pocket, a collection of rusted keys you have spent your life gathering, convinced that each one belongs to a lock that keeps your world from coming undone. Right now, the room around you is cooling. The shadows of the bookshelf are stretching across the floor, and the hum of the day is finally beginning to fade into the deeper stillness of the night. You are not broken, and you are not failing because you still feel that sharp, instinctive need to be on guard. What you are feeling tonight is not a sign of weakness. It is only the habit of a heart that has been trying to protect itself with tools that are no longer useful. If it feels right, let your hand drop away from the weight in your pocket. Let the room support the shape of your body as the floor supports the house, without needing to verify that the walls are standing. We often believe that our worry is the bolt that holds our safety in place. We assume that if we stop checking the locks, if we stop running our fingers over the cold, sharp teeth of those old keys, the doors of our lives will swing wide to let in disaster. But the truth is much quieter and much more kind. Your anxiety is not the sentry that guards your peace. It is the very thing that prevents you from entering the space where peace already lives. There is a strange and beautiful paradox in this. The mind does not become peaceful because you have successfully anticipated every possible threat. It becomes peaceful when you recognize that the iron key you have been clutching for years no longer fits any lock in your house. You have been walking through your life as if the gate were constantly threatening to give way, but perhaps the gate was never there at all. Tonight, we are going to explore this together. We will not try to fix your thoughts, and we will not try to force your mind into a silence that it is not yet ready to inhabit. We are simply going to look at the keys you have been carrying, and we are going to see if we can finally let them fall into the soft, waiting earth. Take a slow breath, noticing the air as it moves into the lungs, bringing a gentle coolness to the chest. If your mind is still darting toward the duties of tomorrow, do not scold yourself for it. That darting motion is just the reflex of the gatekeeper, who does not know how to be anything else. Just notice the impulse. Notice how the mind reaches for the familiar weight of a worry, as if it were reaching for a key to check a lock. And then, with a simple, quiet intention, let the hand relax. You do not need to solve your whole life tonight. You do not need to rearrange the furniture of your past or build a wall around the horizon of your future. You are here, in this room, and the air is steady. The light from the window is soft, casting pale shapes across the sheets, and there is no duty left for you to perform. Even the act of listening is something you can do with a light touch. You do not need to memorize these words or analyze them for a hidden command. Just let the sound of them move through the room like the sound of wind brushing over tall, dry grass. If you find yourself drifting towards sleep, that is the most perfect response. Sleep is simply the act of laying down the keys without needing to know where they have gone. Maybe you have felt this tension so long that it feels like a part of your own skin. You wake up with the keys already in your hand, checking the windows of the mind before the sun has even reached the sill. You feel a constant vibrating vigilance, a belief that you are the only one holding the rafters up. But this is the fatigue of a builder who has forgotten that the foundation is already set. You have been working so hard to protect a home that was meant to be an open courtyard, a place where the sun, the wind, and the passing clouds are welcomed. rather than barred at the door. When we reach for a thought of worry, we are usually trying to find a solution to a problem that hasn't arrived. We treat the thought as a key, thinking, if we just turn it the right way, we will reach the mechanism of safety. But the mind is not a box to be locked. The mind is a river, and you are the one standing on the bank, trying to chain the water to the shore. It is an exhausting task, and the chains you are using are made of iron that has long since turned to dust. It is helpful to acknowledge why we do this. We worry because we care. We ruminate because we believe that by thinking, we are doing, and by doing, we are keeping the people we love and the lives we cherish from drifting away. The error is not in the caring. The error is in the tools we use to express it. We believe that we must be heavy, anxious, and alert to show that we are truly alive and connected to our world. But what if the deepest way to care for your life was to trust it enough to stop guarding it? This brings us to a quiet, ancient realization. The safety you have been chasing through, your constant, frantic thought loops, is not a product of your vigilance. True safety is the ability to stand in the middle of your own life, with all its beautiful uncertainties, and to remain centered even when the path is not clearly mapped. You have been trying to make the world predictable so that you could feel secure. Tonight, we will look at how to find security in the reality of the world, exactly as it is, unpredictable and vast, and entirely capable of holding you without your intervention. As you lie here, allow the weight of the body to sink deeper into the surface beneath you. Feel the heels, the calves, the back of the legs, and the hips. Notice how the earth is already holding you without you having to ask, without you having to lock it in place. You are being held. You can release the muscle tightening that you have been using to keep yourself upright and alert. You are permitted to let the breath become slower, deeper, and more rhythmic, matching the natural pace of the night. If the mind begins to narrate the process, if it begins to judge your inability to perfectly stop the worry, simply listen to that judgment with the same distance you would give to the sound of a distant car passing on the street. It is just another event. It is not you. You are the space where the sound occurs. You are the room. You are not the clutter that the room contains. You might notice that the desire to be better at resting is itself a kind of key. It is the desire to control the process, to turn the act of resting into a task you must perform correctly. But here, there is no performance. There is no judge waiting to see if you have achieved the perfect state of stillness. If you are awake, be awake. If you are drifting, be drifting. If you are anxious, feel the anxiety, but do not turn it into a story about your own inadequacy. There is a story often whispered in the high, windswept valleys of the mountains, where the silence is so profound. It can change the shape of a person's heart. It speaks of a man who spent his life as the guardian of an empty field. He walked the perimeter with a ring of iron keys. His coat heavy with the metal, his brow furrowed with the weight of his duty. He was terrified that if he stopped walking, if he stopped locking the invisible gates that he felt were there, something precious would be taken from the emptiness. We will step into that field now, and we will walk with him for a moment to see if the emptiness is truly something to be feared, or if it is the very thing that has been waiting to set him free. This journey is not meant to be travelled in a rush. It is meant to be walked as one walks through a garden at dusk where the light is dimming and every shadow has a story to tell. Before we begin, look at the sensations in your body one more time. Is there a place where you are still holding on? Is there a place where the chest feels restricted? With a gentle, internal invitation, allow that space to expand. Let the ribs open, just a fraction more. Let the diaphragm soften. You are doing the work of surrender, which is much quieter than the work of fixing. You have already come this far. You have already listened to the silence, and you have already noticed that you are still here, and that the world is still spinning, quite independent of your worry. Let us continue then into the story of the gatekeeper and see what he discovers when the iron finally falls in a high, windswept, highland region where the clouds often gather like heavy wool. There lived an aging man known as the gatekeeper of the empty field. This field was vast, bordered only by the gentle slope of the hills and the unpredictable movement of the mountain air. There was no fence, no wall, and no physical boundary to keep anything in or out. Yet the gatekeeper felt a profound, heavy responsibility for the space. He walked the perimeter from dawn until the last light left the sky, his long coat swishing against the dry grass. In his deep pockets, he carried a heavy iron ring that held dozens of keys. Some were small and delicate, while others were thick, rusted, and jagged. He did not walk the field because he was ordered to. He walked it because he was terrified. He believed that the field contained the most fragile treasures imaginable: the morning dew, the silence of the valley, the health of the crops, and even the safety of the village below. He was convinced that every gust of wind was a thief trying to steal the stillness of the field. Every passing shadow was a potential intruder. To prevent this, he had developed a strange, frantic habit. Whenever he heard a rustle, whenever he felt the air shift, he would reach into his pocket, pull out a key, and make a locking motion toward the air. He would twist his wrist, click the key, and imagine that he was bolting the atmosphere itself. He had become remarkably thin over the years. His hands were constantly trembling from the effort of gripping the heavy iron ring. He slept very little, for he was always worried that a lock he had set might be failing, or that a new gust of wind required a new, specialized key. He had a key for the rain, a key for the moonlight, and a key for the very shadows that stretched across the earth. He believed that the integrity of the field and his own worth as its protector depended entirely on his ability to keep the iron ringing. The sound of those keys, a constant, clinking, metallic rhythm, was the only music he had known for decades. He was a man with dusty sandals and an empty pack, looking for a place to sit and watch the sunset. He walked directly into the middle of the field and sat down on a large, smooth stone. The gatekeeper froze. Panic flared in his chest like a sudden spark. He rushed toward the visitor, his hands diving into his pockets, fingers scrambling to find the key for visitors, the key for disruptions, the key for the unknown. He reached the traveler, gasping for breath, his eyes wide and searching. The traveler did not move. He simply looked at the sky and smiled. The gatekeeper began to tremble, holding out a large, rusted key in front of the traveler, pointing it toward the stranger's heart, as if trying to lock him in place, to keep him from changing the field. The traveler turned his head, looked at the iron key, and then looked at the gatekeeper's exhausted, pale face. He did not seem frightened. He did not seem like an intruder. He reached out and gently placed his hand over the gatekeeper's wrist, forcing him to lower the iron. The traveler asked a simple question that seemed to drift across the grass, like a seed pod. He asked the gatekeeper to show him the door. The old man blinked, confused. He pointed to the north, then to the south, then to the east. He pointed to the empty space where the grass swayed in the wind. He insisted that the doors were invisible, that they were scattered throughout the air, and that he had spent his entire life keeping them shut to ensure that nothing harmful could enter. The traveller stood up, walked to the edge of the field, and looked out over the boundless horizon. He asked the gatekeeper if he had ever noticed that the wind he tried to lock away was the same wind that carried the seeds for the next season. He asked if the sunlight he tried to capture was the same light that kept the ground warm. He pointed to the keys and asked, very softly, what happens to a field when you finally succeed in locking it perfectly? The gatekeeper did not answer. He just looked at his hands. They were raw, stained with rust, and cramped into a permanent, painful shape from decades of holding the iron ring. The traveller reached out and took the heavy ring from the gatekeeper's fingers. The weight of it was surprising. It pulled the traveller's arm downward, forcing him to stagger slightly under the load. He held it up to the late afternoon sun, where the rust glittered like dried blood. He walked to a small, deep depression in the earth, near the stone where he had been sitting. He did not throw the keys away. He did not demand that the gatekeeper abandon his duty. He simply set the ring down in the moss and covered it with a light layer of soil. He then turned back to the gatekeeper and invited him to sit on the stone. The gatekeeper remained standing. He felt a phantom weight in his pocket. He reached for the keys, his fingers frantically brushing against nothing, against the empty, soft fabric of his coat. A sudden, terrifying wave of vulnerability washed over him. He felt exposed. He felt as if the sky were about to collapse, as if the wind would tear the entire world apart. Because he was no longer there to lock it down, he looked at the traveller with genuine fear. He asked how they would survive the night without the protection of the iron. The traveller looked at the field. The grass was still waving. The light was still golden. The sky had not shifted. He told the gatekeeper that the field was not a fortress, and it had never been a fortress. It was a meadow. And a meadow, he explained, is defined by its willingness to let the world pass through it. He asked the gatekeeper to notice that the field had not asked for his keys. The field had only asked for his presence. The old man began to weep, but it was not a weeping of grief. It was the sound of a spring finally breaking through the ice. He looked at his hands, open and empty, and for the first time in his memory, they did not shake. The traveller did not offer a grand lesson. He did not promise that no storms would ever come. He simply suggested that they watch the stars emerge together. In silence, the gatekeeper sat down on the stone. He felt the cold iron in his pocketless coat replaced by the warmth of the evening air. He realized that the locks were not what had kept the field safe. The field had been safe because it had nothing to hide and nothing to lose. As we move deeper into this stillness, consider your own ring of keys. You may not carry iron in your pockets, but you carry the same heavy metal in the chambers of your mind. Every time you rehearse a conversation you had years ago, you are clicking a lock on the past. Every time you imagine a catastrophe that has not yet occurred, you are attempting to bolt the door of the future. You have been walking the perimeter of your own field, terrified that if you stop guarding it, if you stop the constant, internal clinking of your worries, your own life will be stolen from you. But notice the fatigue in your own fingers. Feel the way your jaw holds the tension of 100 imaginary doors. This is not because you are failing to protect what is precious. It is because you have mistakenly identified your own life as something that needs to be locked away, rather than something that needs to be lived. The traveller's question is for you tonight. If you were to set the keys down, if you were to allow the doors of your mind to simply stand open, what would happen to the world? Would it truly vanish, or would it finally be able to breathe? You are not required to throw your keys into the earth tonight. That is a task for a lifetime of small, quiet choices, but you are invited to feel the weight of them. Notice the shape of your own anxiety. Does it feel like a heavy, rusted ring? Does it feel like a constant, mechanical need to check and recheck the world? If it does, do not be ashamed. It is simply evidence of how much you have cared for the safety of your heart. It is evidence of how hard you have tried to be a good guardian. But remember the gatekeeper. His greatest burden was not the danger of the field. His greatest burden was the belief that he was the only thing preventing the world from falling into chaos. You are not that fragile, and your life is not that delicate. You are the meadow, not the wall. You are the space, not the key. As the night deepens, let the thought of the keys settle into the background. You do not have to discard them yet. You only have to notice that your hands are tired and that they deserve a moment of rest. Let the iron go. Let the hands open. Let the field be what it is, vast, open, and completely, perfectly unguarded. This is where the true rest begins, in the realization that you were never the one holding the rafters up, and you were never the one responsible for the turning of the stars. You are only the one who gets to watch, to breathe, and to finally, blissfully, let the gates swing wide. The gatekeeper's struggle is not a distant historical tale. It is the story of your own mind when the sun sets, and the silence begins to rise around you. For decades, the gatekeeper believed that the wind was an enemy to be locked away. He believed that the very elements of the meadow were threats to his security. You have been doing something remarkably similar with your own inner life. You have taken the unpredictable gusts of your emotions, the shadows of your memories, and the fleeting nature of your future, and you have treated them as intruders that must be bolted down behind the iron of your worry. You assume that if you stop clicking those imaginary keys, if you stop the constant rhythmic tension of your hypervigilance, then the field of your life will be ravaged by the storm. But the teaching here is not about becoming indifferent. It is not asking you to stop caring about your safety or the people you love. The wisdom is found in the difference between being a guardian and being a prisoner. When you live in a constant state of locking, you are not protecting the field. You are simply exhausting the hands that were meant to tend it. The gatekeeper's pain was not caused by the wind, for the wind was simply part of the meadow's nature. The pain was caused by his insistence that the wind stay still. When you demand that your thoughts stay still, when you demand that your worries cease immediately, you are doing the exact same thing. You are trying to lock the air. You are trying to bolt a door that doesn't exist. Often, we experience a moment of genuine difficulty, a worry about a conversation, a regret about a mistake, or a fear about tomorrow. This is the first wound. It is the natural consequence of being a human being with a heart that cares. But then, the mind begins its long, wearying process of locking. It creates a story about why the worry must be held. It says that if you stop worrying, you are being irresponsible. It says that if you don't keep the keys in your hand, you are neglecting your duty. This is the second wound. It is the pain you add on top of the original experience, the weight of the iron you carry because you believe your anxiety is the only thing keeping the world from collapsing. This is what it means to let go. It does not mean you abandon the field. It means you stop trying to keep it trapped in a static, frozen state of your own design. The meadow thrives because it is open. It thrives because it allows the rain to fall and the sun to shine without requiring them to ask for permission. Your own life requires the same permission. You need the space to feel the gusts of your own humanity without reaching for the keys to lock them away. When you feel a sharp pang of anxiety, notice how quickly the mind reaches for the metal. Notice how it wants to categorize the feeling, to solve it, to bind it with a heavy chain of logic. Just because a thought arises does not mean it has the authority to command your actions. A thought is a ripple on the surface of the meadow. It is a movement of air. It has no substance. When you treat every thought as a command, you are essentially trying to lock a shadow. You are exhausting yourself by trying to make the fleeting, changing nature of your experience into something permanent and predictable. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a vast sky. Clouds appear, they change shape, they darken, and they vanish. If you try to lock a cloud, you will only end up with a tired, shaking hand and a heart that has forgotten how to be light. We have learned to fear the openness of our own awareness. We feel that if we are not constantly vigilant, we will disappear. We feel that if we are not constantly preparing for the next intrusion, we will be caught unaware. But true strength is not found in the tightness of your grip. True strength is found in your ability to remain present, even when the weather of your life is changing. It is found in the realization that you are not the gatekeeper of a fragile, crumbling fortress. You are the field itself, and the field is far more resilient than the mind gives it credit for. This is a subtle, quiet shift in perspective. You are not being asked to stop feeling. You are not being asked to become a cold, distant spectator of your own life. You are being asked to notice the difference between the movement of the meadow and the clinking of the keys. When you feel that tightness in your chest, when the urge to reach for a key becomes overwhelming, take a moment to look at your hands. Are they open? Are they resting? Or are they still formed into that phantom shape, gripping a ring that isn't there? The simple act of noticing this tightness is the beginning of the release. It is the moment when you recognize that you have been adding a layer of iron to a situation that only required your presence. You might feel a sudden sense of exposure when you consider setting the keys down. That is perfectly natural. You have been carrying them for so long that they have become part of your identity. You know yourself as the one who worries, as the one who checks, as the one who protects. To imagine yourself without the keys is to imagine yourself without a purpose. But your purpose is not to be a guard. Your purpose is to be the field. Your purpose is to experience the beauty of the harvest, the change of the seasons, and the simple, ordinary grace of being alive. The exhaustion you feel tonight is the result of years of guarding a gate that was always meant to be wide open. You are tired because you have been fighting the sky. You are tired because you have been trying to make the grass stand still when the breeze wants to dance. It is time to see if you can grant yourself permission to stop the clicking of the locks. It is time to see if you can allow the night to be what it is: quiet, vast, and completely safe without your intervention. There is a deep underlying trust that emerges when you finally stop trying to control the wind. It is a trust that your life is supported by something much larger than your own fearful thoughts. Just as the meadow doesn't need to hold the earth together, you don't need to hold your own experience together with the iron of your worry. It is already held. It has been held by the rhythm of the seasons, by the turning of the night and by the very nature of your own being, long before you ever started collecting those heavy, rusted keys. As you sit here in the quiet of this room, notice the rhythm of your own breathing. It is happening without your effort. The body is doing this work for you, and it has been doing it for years. If the body can be trusted to handle the breath, perhaps the heart can be trusted to handle the feelings. Perhaps the mind can be trusted to experience the thoughts without turning them into a permanent record of your own failure. You are already in the meadow. You are already part of the unfolding, and you are already, despite your exhaustion, a masterpiece of living, breathing, and enduring change. If you find that the keys are still in your hand, if you find that the mind is still trying to lock the air, do not judge yourself. Do not add a third wound to the first two. Just notice the habit. Acknowledge the intention behind it, the intention to keep yourself safe. Then, with the gentleness of a gardener touching a wilted leaf, simply allow the fingers to relax. The keys can stay in your pocket. You don't have to throw them away tonight. You don't even have to look at them. You only have to recognize that they are not required for you to rest. You are not in a fortress. You are under the stars, in an open field, and the only thing required of you right now is to let the hands go soft. Everything you are afraid of losing, the silence, the beauty, the goodness, is already woven into the fabric of the meadow. It does not need your protection. It only needs your awareness. As you continue to breathe, let the sound of these words drift into the background. You are moving closer to the heart of the matter, toward the understanding that your safety was never something you had to earn. It was something you were born into, something that has been waiting patiently and quietly for you to finally set the iron down. In the next few moments, we will explore a small, simple practice that will help you feel the weight of those keys in your own life, so you can learn how to place them on the moss and how to finally, deeply, and completely let go. There is a quiet, rhythmic power in the act of simply noticing that you are holding the iron ring. You do not need to drop it immediately. You do not need to command your hands to open if they are not yet ready. For now, we will simply explore the weight of your own habits with the same patient curiosity the traveler brought to the empty field. If it feels right, close your eyes, or if that feels too vulnerable, just let your gaze soften until the shapes in the room blur into gentle, shifting shadows. Feel the contact of your body against the bed, the way the surface beneath you is steady and unmoving. You are not required to hold anything up tonight. Take a slow breath, letting it rise all the way into the chest, and as you exhale, imagine the shoulders dropping just an inch further toward the earth. We are going to look for the keys you have been carrying. You don't have to search for them intentionally, for they are never far from the surface of your awareness. Just notice the next thought that drifts into the center of your mind. Maybe it is a memory of a task left undone, or a worry about someone you love, or a sharp, sudden critique of a mistake you believe you made today. Whatever it is, treat it not as a truth, but as a small, cold piece of iron in your hand. See the thought clearly. Do not push it away, for that is simply reaching for another key to lock the sensation out. Do not follow the thought into its tangled web of consequences, for that is simply using the key to turn the lock and enter the room of your own worry. Just look at the thought. See it as an object, small and metallic, vibrating with the energy of your own vigilance. Name the pattern. Perhaps you can name it simple concern, or perhaps you can name it the fear of being unready. Giving it a name is like turning on a small, soft lamp in a dark corridor. It takes the mystery away. It allows you to see the object for exactly what it is, rather than what you fear it might imply. Now, imagine that you are holding this thought in the palm of your hand. It has a specific texture. Maybe it is jagged or heavy, or smooth and cold. Observe how your hand naturally wants to close around it, to tighten the fist, to make sure it doesn't slip away. This is the instinct of the gatekeeper. It is the instinct that tells you, if you let go, you are neglecting your duty. But notice what happens to your arm when you hold a fist for too long. The muscles strain, the nerves begin to hum with a frantic, repetitive tension. The hand itself begins to ache. This is the price of the key. If it feels right, allow the fingers to relax, just a little. You don't have to drop the key yet. Just stop squeezing it. Feel the air touching the skin of your palm. Notice that even with your hand slightly open, the thought remains. It has not disappeared, and yet it is no longer exerting the same pressure on your life. The world has not collapsed because you stopped clenching your fist around the idea. The sky is still resting above the roof. The silence in the room remains intact. This is the first small movement of freedom. It is the recognition that the thought is not a tool you must hold, but an event you are simply witnessing. We often believe that if we stop worrying, we will stop caring, but notice the warmth that exists in your chest beneath the tightness. That warmth is the reality of your care. It is the capacity of your heart to hold what is important, without needing to build a wall of iron around it. The worry is just a shadow cast by that love, a shadow that has grown long and distorted because you have been staring at it for so long. You can have the care without the worry. You can hold the love without the iron. Perhaps you might imagine the moss-covered patch of earth near the traveller's stone. It is soft, cool, and silent. If you are ready, imagine placing that single piece of iron, that single, persistent worry, onto the green moss. Watch as it rests there. It is just a piece of metal on the earth. It has no power to lock the wind. It has no power to block the horizon. It is merely a thing that was, and now it is a thing that sits quietly in the grass. You are standing beside it, and you are not holding it anymore. You are breathing. You are present. You are the field that allows the object to exist without needing to interfere with it. If the mind wanders back to the key, if the instinct to pick it up again returns with force, do not scold yourself. That is not a failure. That is just the habit of a long lifetime of guarding. Acknowledge it with a kind of internal nod. Say to yourself, there is the old reflex again. There is the gatekeeper doing what he was taught to do. Then, with the same gentle patience, let your awareness move back to the sensation of your own breathing. Focus on the cool air touching your nostrils, the slight rise and fall of the belly, the way the breath enters and leaves, never staying, never clinging, always moving. The breath is the only master key you will ever need. It does not lock anything. It only opens. It creates the space for everything else to be as it is. When the thoughts come, let them be like the breeze moving through the open field. Let them stir the grass. Let them move the leaves of the trees. You do not have to chase them. You do not have to catch them in a bowl. You do not have to categorize them as good or bad. You are the meadow, and the meadow does not ask the breeze for its credentials. It simply invites it to pass through. You may notice that your chest feels slightly more hollow, more open than it did a few moments ago. That is the feeling of the iron leaving. That is the feeling of the weight being redistributed to the earth, where it belongs. You are not becoming light because you are escaping. You are becoming light because you are finally letting go of the burden that wasn't yours to carry. The worries about tomorrow are not your anchors. They are not what keep you safe. Your safety is in your presence. Your safety is in your capacity to sit with yourself, here and now, without needing to turn your life into a series of bolted doors. If the mind feels restless, if it begins to demand that you find a solution to the things you are worried about, ask yourself one question. Can I solve this right now, in the middle of the night? The answer will always be no. And if the answer is no, then the thought is not a request for action. It is just a phantom key. You are allowed to leave it on the moss. You are allowed to turn your back on it and walk toward the stillness of the center of your own field. There is nothing in your history that can prevent you from resting tonight. The mistakes of the past are not locks. They are just events that have already moved through the meadow. The fears of the future are not doors. They are just possibilities that have not yet arrived. The only thing that exists is this room, this breath, and the slow, beautiful fading of the day. You have done enough today. You have been the guardian for long enough, even if you haven't succeeded in locking everything down. You have survived, and that is a testament to the fact that the meadow knows how to take care of itself. You might feel a sudden, quiet gratitude rising not for anything you have accomplished, but simply for the fact that you can stop, that you can finally sit on the stone beside the traveler, that you can finally let the iron rest. It is a profound, deep relief to realize that you are not the center of the universe's chaos. You are just a part of its unfolding, and the unfolding is doing just fine. Whenever you feel that old, familiar tension returning to your hands, remember the moss. Remember the weight of the ring, and the way it looked when it was finally laid down. You don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to eliminate all of your worries in one night. You only have to start the practice of noticing. You only have to start the practice of deciding for just a few seconds that you don't need to hold the iron. That is enough. That is more than enough to change the direction of your life. As you continue to sit with this image, notice how much quieter the room has become. The distant sounds of the world are just background now, like the murmuring of a stream far off. In the valley, they do not demand your attention. They do not require your keys. They are simply there, and you are simply here. Everything is settling into its proper place. The night is doing its work of gathering and folding, and you are doing your work of resting and releasing. You are not alone in this field. You are held by the same ground that holds the mountains, and you are watched over by the same stars that watch the gatekeeper find his peace. You are exactly where you need to be, and you have exactly as much as you need to begin this long, slow exhale of your entire life. In a remote village, nestled at the base of a jagged, grey mountain, there lived a young woman named Ilara, who was known as the finest lockmaker for miles. She possessed a collection of metal tools that she kept polished until they shone like mirrors. And she lived in a house filled with cabinets containing intricate, hand-carved locks. Ilara believed that the world was composed of things that were constantly on the verge of being lost, and her purpose was to secure them. She locked her cabinets, her windows, her diaries, and even the doors of her mind against any intrusion of doubt or change. She spent her days meticulously crafting keys for problems that had not yet occurred. If she felt a flicker of sadness, she would immediately craft a new lock to keep that sadness from spreading. If she felt a surge of fear about her own future, she would forge a heavy bolt to ensure that future remained distant and manageable. Her hands were always stained with the metallic grit of her work, and her back was permanently curved from hours spent hunched over her workbench. She was respected for her skill, yet she was profoundly exhausted, as if she were carrying the weight of 1,000 locked doors within her own chest. One autumn, an elderly hermit arrived in the village. He was a woodcarver who carried nothing but a single, dull knife and a small pouch of seeds. He did not build walls, and he did not seek shelter in a locked room. Instead, he spent his days in the village square, whittling simple figures of animals and birds from scrap wood. People brought him their troubles, and he listened with an ear that seemed to hear not just their words, but the silence beneath them. Elara, driven by a strange, hollow ache in her heart, finally brought him a challenge. She walked to the square with a complex, ornate box she had spent months designing. It was a masterpiece of iron and brass, a puzzle box with 5 independent, interlocking mechanisms. She placed it before the hermit, her hands trembling with the need to prove that her skill could protect even the most delicate things. She told him that inside this box was her most precious possession, a memory of a time before her life felt so heavy. And she asked him to tell her how to lock it so that not even time could touch it. The hermit did not reach for the box. He did not even look at the intricate, shining teeth of the locks. He simply continued to whittle a small, wooden sparrow knob. After a long silence, he asked her what the box would be if it were never opened. Elara replied that it would be safe, preserved, and untainted by the passing days. The hermit looked up, his eyes bright and kind, and he asked if a box that was never opened was truly a vessel for life or merely a tomb for the past. He then asked her to hold out her hands. He placed the small wooden sparrow into her palm. He told her that this bird was carved to fly, but it could only fulfill its nature if its wings were free to move. He then turned his attention to the puzzle box. He did not use a tool. He did not use force. He simply held the box in his 2 hands, closed his eyes, and breathed. He stood in the square for an hour, the world moving around them, the wind tugging at his robe, the village children playing, the sun crossing the sky. Elara watched him, her heart beating with an impatient, nervous rhythm. She wanted him to use a pick, a lever, a key, anything that would show her how to exert control over the mechanism, but he just sat, his breathing deep and steady, his fingers resting lightly on the brass. When the sun finally began to dip below the ridge, the hermit sighed, a soft sound like leaves rustling on the ground. He did not turn a key. He did not twist a bolt. He simply let his hands soften, relaxing his grip entirely. With a sound like a gentle click, the box fell open. It did not require a key at all. It had been held shut by the very pressure of Elara's constant, frantic guarding. Inside, there was no treasure. There was only a single, dried flower, brittle and beautiful, and a small note in Elara's own handwriting that said, "I am afraid of losing myself." The hermit did not mock her. He did not even point at the flower. He simply picked up the box, held it open, and invited her to look at the space inside. He explained that she had been spending her life building cages for things that were already free. The fear she felt was not a thief to be locked away, but a visitor, asking to be seen. He pointed to her hands, still calloused and stained, and asked her what would happen if she used those same hands to build a garden gate instead of a prison bolt. Elara stood in the square for a long time. She looked at the wooden sparrow in her hand, feeling the weight of it, the simple, honest presence of it. For the first time, she felt the urge to reach into her pocket for her tools, to fix the moment, to secure the experience. But she paused. She did not reach. She did not lock. She chose to breathe. A single, deep breath that started in her belly and travelled all the way to her shoulders. It was a small act, almost invisible, but it was the first time she had ever chosen not to react to her own anxiety. She did not throw away her tools. She did not burn her cabinets. She simply decided to leave the puzzle box open on the hermit's bench. She walked home that evening, the air cool against her skin, and she realized that she was not carrying the heavy ring of keys. She had left them in the square, not as an act of discarding, but as an act of trust. She felt light, and in that lightness, she felt a profound, quiet terror. But she did not run from it. She walked into her house, sat by the window, and watched the moonlight wash over her work table. She did not close the window. She did not bolt the door. She sat and let the night be exactly what it was. This is the transformation you are capable of tonight. It is not about becoming a person who never feels fear. It is about becoming a person who no longer believes that fear requires a lock. When the old instinct arises, when you feel the familiar pull to rehearse, to fix, to secure, or to worry, you have the power to do exactly what Elara did. You can pause. You can take one breath, a real, physical breath that fills the lungs and softens the jaw, and you can choose not to pick up the tool. You can choose to let the box remain open. You might find that when you stop locking the thoughts, they do not turn into monsters. They turn into what they always were, fleeting, temporary movements of your own energy. They arise, they change, and they dissolve, leaving you exactly where you started, in the presence of your own life. This is the subtle, powerful shift. You are no longer the guard. You are the host. You are the one who welcomes the moment, whatever it brings, with a heart that has finally learned how to be still. As you lie here, feel the space around your own body. There are no walls here, and there are no locks. Your thoughts are not intruders. They are simply part of the night air, moving through the field of your awareness. You can let them be. You can allow them to drift like the wooden bird, caught on the breeze, rising and falling without the need to be captured. You have done enough work for one day. You have held enough keys. Now, you are invited to experience the grace of the unbolted heart, the peace that comes when you stop trying to keep the world under your thumb and instead begin to trust it to hold you. This trust is not a naive belief that everything will be pleasant. It is a profound, mature realization that you are resilient enough to meet whatever comes, without the armor of your anxiety. You do not need the iron. You do not need the cage. You only need the willingness to be present, to breathe, and to let the moments fall away, one by one, like leaves dropping into a quiet pond. There is a deep, resonant safety in this. It is the safety of the mountain that does not need to guard itself against the snow, and the safety of the meadow that does not need to guard itself against the moon. You are that mountain, you are that meadow, and you are finally, beautifully, free to rest. The weight you have been carrying is not a measure of your duty. It is a symptom of a mind that has forgotten how to inhabit the present without turning it into a construction site. When you find yourself replaying a conversation from years ago, you are attempting to polish a stone that was washed away by the river a lifetime ago. When you lie awake, rehearsing the catastrophes of tomorrow, you are trying to bolt a door against a wind that hasn't even begun to blow. This constant internal industry is not safety. It is a profound, exhausting resistance to the reality that you are not in control of the tide. You have been trying to make the world as predictable as a locked room, but your life is a field, and it will always move according to its own nature. This brings us to the core of why the mind clings so tightly to its own misery. We often turn our pain into an identity because it feels more secure than the unknown. If I am the person who worries, then I am a person who is prepared. If I am the person who judges my own failures, then I am a person who cares about being better. We fear that if we drop the shame, if we drop the constant self-critique, we will lose our footing and drift into insignificance. But this is the paradox of the locked gate. By holding on to the pain to define yourself, you are simply ensuring that you stay trapped in the small, cramped room of your own history, unable to step out into the vastness of who you actually are. The Buddha spoke of this as the distinction between the arrows we cannot avoid and the arrows we fire into ourselves. When life brings a loss, a disappointment, or a moment of genuine suffering, that is the first arrow. It is the sting of the world, the inevitable friction of being alive. But the mind, in its fear, decides that it must prevent this from ever happening again. It begins to fire a second, and a third, and 100 more arrows into the self. It says, I should have known better. I am not good enough. I must be more vigilant. I must be more perfect. I must be more afraid. These are the arrows you are firing into your own heart. They are not protecting you. They are only ensuring that the initial wound never has the chance to close. You do not need to fix the first arrow. You cannot prevent the world from changing, and you cannot stop the flow of human experience from occasionally bringing you pain. But you can stop the firing of the second arrow. You can notice the moment the mind turns from the experience itself to the judgment of the experience. That is where the transformation happens. It is not in the absence of struggle, but in the decision to stop being the one who makes the struggle permanent. Think of it as a riverbed. When the rain falls, the river rises. That is the nature of the water. But if you stand in the river and try to stop the water from moving, if you try to build a wall of stone in the center of the current, the pressure will only increase. The water will eventually push past your wall, or it will undermine the foundation until the whole structure collapses. The wall is your resistance. It is your need to have things be different than they currently are. The wisdom of the river is that it does not resist the rain. It allows the water to pass. It shapes itself to the flow, and it remains the river whether the rain is light or heavy. You have been trying to build a dam in the middle of your own life. You are worried that if you let the feelings flow, you will be swept away. But you are not the wall, and you are not the water. You are the riverbed. You are the space that holds the flow. You are resilient, deep, and capable of containing every emotion that passes through you, from the darkest grief to the brightest joy, without ever needing to be damaged by them. When you feel the need for approval, when you feel that hollow, frantic sense that you must perform your own value to the world, notice what happens in the chest. There is a contraction. It is the feeling of someone pulling the curtains shut so that no one can see into the room. You are hiding behind your own efforts. trying to ensure that people see a version of you that is worthy of safety. But the desire for approval is just another key. It is a key you are trying to turn in a lock that no one else has a hand on. You are the only one holding the door, and you are the only one who can decide to let the curtains open. This is why self-judgment is so pervasive. We use it as a form of preemptive defense. If I judge myself before the world can judge me, I am still in control. I am the one holding the gavel. I am the one deciding my own worthiness. But the gavel is just another tool of the gatekeeper. It is just another piece of heavy rusted iron that makes it impossible to hold your life with any true gentle grace. You do not need the gavel. You do not need to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner of your own potential. You only need to be the person who is here, in the meadow, learning how to exist without the need for constant external or internal validation. As we go deeper, notice how the mind wants to label this process as doing nothing. It calls rest laziness. It calls presence wasted time. It calls the absence of worry danger. This is the mind's way of trying to get you back to the workbench. It wants you to stay hunched over, crafting those locks, because the mind is terrified of the empty, open space where it has no job to do. But look at your life tonight. Look at the fact that you have managed to arrive at this moment, despite all the times you felt you weren't enough. You are here. You are breathing. You have done more than enough. The Buddhist insight is not that you should stop thinking. It is that you should stop believing that your thoughts are the architects of your reality. You are the sky. The thoughts are just weather. Some days, the weather is clear. Some days, it is stormy. But the sky is never broken by the storm. It is never diminished by the clouds. It remains the sky, vast and unmoving, even when the wind is screaming. You can be that sky too. You can feel the intensity of your own frustration, your own anxiety, or your own longing, and you can hold it in the vastness of your own awareness without needing to do anything about it. This is the ultimate form of compassion. It is not an act of sympathy you offer to someone else. It is the act of, finally, truly, being a friend to the person who lives in your own skin. It is the realization that the one who has been suffering is the one who has been trying the hardest to keep you safe. You can turn to that part of yourself, the gatekeeper, the lockmaker, the anxious child who wants everything to be certain, and you can say, "Thank you. Thank you for trying so hard. Thank you for staying awake all those nights, but now you are safe. Now you can let the keys go." There is a profound, quiet beauty in this. When you finally stop the resistance, when you finally let the dam dissolve, you will discover something you have been missing for a long time. You will discover the joy of simply being alive, without the need to justify your existence. You will discover the taste of the air, the feel of the sheets, the sound of the world, in a way that is vivid, immediate, and utterly unencumbered by the heavy machinery of your worry. It is not that the world will become perfect. It is that you will finally be present for it. As the night continues, let this understanding settle into the bones. You are not the builder of your own prison. You are the life that was trying to protect itself. You can stop building the cages, and you can start walking in the meadow. You are already in the meadow. You never left it. You just spent a long time staring at the gate, trying to find the right key to open it, never realizing that the gate was not keeping you in, and it was not keeping the world out. It was just a frame, a circle of air, waiting for you to walk through it. and finally see the view that has been there all along. The exhaustion you feel is the final, parting gift of the gatekeeper. It is the physical sensation of the transition from fighting to arriving. Allow yourself to feel that tiredness, not as a sign that you are failing, but as a sign that you are finally beginning to let the weight drop. You have been carrying the iron for a long time. It is only natural that your arms would feel the need to hang by your sides for a while. Let them hang. Let them be heavy. Let the floor take the weight. You are being held by the earth, just as the meadow is held by the horizon. You are safe here, in this quiet open space, and you can stay here for as long as you need. There is no urgency. There is no alarm that you must answer. There is only the long, slow, rhythmic pulse of the night, inviting you to let go just a little bit more. You might wonder how this meadow, this vast and unbolted field, has any place in the rush of your Tuesday morning or the anxiety of a Thursday afternoon. It is easy to find peace here, in the dark, with the weight of the day behind you. It is much harder to find it when you are standing in line at the market or staring at a glowing screen, waiting for a message that never seems to arrive. But this is exactly where the practice of the unbolted heart begins. It does not start when you are perfectly still. It starts when you are right in the middle of the mess, and you suddenly notice that your hand is reaching for a phantom key. Think of those moments when you are lying in bed, the house is silent, but your mind is running through a conversation you had at work. You are mentally checking the locks, trying to see if your tone was too sharp or if your point was made too softly. You are trying to secure your reputation in the past, a past that has already dissolved into history. In that moment, recognize the reflex. Notice that you are reaching for the iron ring in your pocket. You do not need to scold yourself for it. Just feel the heat in your palm, the familiar, restless need to fix what has already passed. Then, simply open the hand. Let the iron stay on the imaginary moss. You are not required to resolve the past tonight. You are only required to be present for the quiet of your room. The same is true for the moments when you feel behind in life. You compare yourself to the achievements of others, and you feel a sharp, cold contraction in your chest. You believe you are failing to guard your own future, as if your life were a field being overrun by weeds while you weren't looking. But this too is a phantom lock. It is a bolt you are trying to slide into place against the flow of your own unique timing. When you feel that comparison rising, notice it as a wind. It is just weather. It is not a command to panic, and it is not a reason to start building a wall. Stay in the meadow. Acknowledge that the season of your life is your own, and it is moving at the exact pace it was meant to travel. What about the times you feel you must perform your own worth? Perhaps you are in a relationship or a friendship, and you feel a frantic urge to provide reassurance or to seek it, checking your phone for a sign that you are safe. This is the desire for a gatekeeper to tell you that the locks are holding, but you are not a lock, and your connections with others are not rooms that must be defended against entry or exit. When you feel that urge to force a sense of security through constant action, pause, take one breath. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Remind yourself that you do not need to hold the other person, and you do not need to hold yourself in a state of static, artificial safety. You are safe enough to let the relationship be what it is, and to let yourself be who you are, without the armor of constant checking. You likely carry a deep sense of guilt when you try to rest. You feel that If you are not productive, if you are not solving, if you are not working, you are failing your duty to the field. But the field needs the night. The field needs the winter. If the meadow were constantly pushing, constantly growing, constantly performing, it would be a desert. Rest is not a reward you must earn by completing your tasks. Rest is the natural, necessary state of the field. When you give yourself permission to stop, you are not neglecting the harvest. You are allowing the soil to replenish itself. You are doing the work of being human, which is the most important work of all. There is a subtle, beautiful discipline in choosing not to obey every thought. When a thought comes, shouting that you must worry about a mistake you made 3 years ago, or that you must fear a scenario that has a 1% chance of occurring, you can treat that thought like a stranger walking through the meadow. You see them. You acknowledge their presence. But you do not have to invite them to sit at your table. You do not have to feed them. You do not have to give them your keys. You can let them walk through the field, and you can watch them disappear over the horizon, leaving you exactly where you were, in the silence, in the breath, in the now. This requires no special gear. You do not need a temple, or a retreat, or a long, uninterrupted span of time. You only need the space between the thought and the reaction. That small, infinitesimal gap is the entire meadow. It is the wide open expanse where you are free. When you are about to snap at someone in frustration, or when you are about to dive into a spiral of self-criticism, use that gap, breathe. Notice the tension in your hands. Let the imaginary keys fall. That one simple pause is the most profound act of wisdom you can perform in a modern, hurried world. It is the act of choosing the meadow over the fortress. You might find that people around you notice the change. You might seem a little slower to react, a little less brittle, a little more present. This is not because you have become indifferent or cold. It is because you have finally stopped the frantic, clinking noise of your own internal guarding. You are becoming a person who can hold the weight of a changing life without needing to turn it into a tragedy. You are becoming a person who knows that safety is not found in the locks, but in the heart that is brave enough to stay open. Forgiveness, too, becomes a different practice. When you have been hurt, you often build a massive gate, locking the offender out and locking your own pain in. You think the lock protects you, but it only serves to keep you trapped with the memory of the hurt. True forgiveness is not about saying what happened was right. It is about realizing that you have been holding a key for a door that you no longer want to defend. It is about letting the gate stay open so that the hurt can move through the meadow and eventually dissipate, rather than staying in your heart like a stagnant pond. As you walk through your days, look for the moments where you are holding on. Notice the tightness in your throat. When you want to control an outcome, notice the grip of your jaw when you are replaying a grievance. Notice the way your feet feel, always ready to run toward the next emergency. These are your signals. These are the bells ringing, not to alert you of a disaster, but to remind you that you have forgotten to breathe. Every time you notice, you have done the work. Every time you catch yourself, you are reclaiming your life from the habit of the guard. You do not need to be perfect at this. You will pick up the keys again. You will try to lock the air again. That is the nature of a mind that has been shaped by many years of effort. When you find yourself back in the habit, just laugh, a soft, internal laugh of recognition. You are not a failure. You are just a human being, learning how to unbolt the doors. You are just a meadow, learning how to be a meadow. The practice is not about achieving a final, permanent state of lock-free living. It is about the rhythm of the return. Notice, release, breathe. Notice, release, breathe. This is the rhythm of your own liberation. It is the movement of a life that has decided it is ready to be lived, not just managed. As you continue to move through your world, carry this awareness with you. Let the meadow be the foundation of your movement. When you feel the familiar surge of pressure, remember that you are the field. You are the space. You are the sky. You are the host of the unfolding, and you are always, always enough. There is nothing to prove and there is nothing to defend. The field is open, the wind is blowing, and you are finally, quietly, ready to inhabit your own life. The air in the room has grown still, and the shadows have softened their edges against the walls. You have spent your time here, walking the perimeter of an empty field, and you have slowly discovered that the iron keys you carried were never meant to lock away the sky. The weight in your pockets has dissolved into the earth, and the tension in your hands has melted away, leaving them open and light. You are no longer the gatekeeper of a fortress that did not exist. You are simply the meadow, vast and quiet, receiving the cooling descent of the night. There is no need for you to do anything more. The harvest has been gathered, the season has turned, and the work of being everything to everyone is finally completely over. Feel the heavy warmth of your body sinking into the mattress. It is as if you are being embraced by the same ground that holds the mountains in their place. Every muscle, from the corners of your eyes to the tips of your toes, is unraveling. The tightness that once defined you is becoming a memory, like a distant rustle of leaves that you no longer need to investigate. You are not forgetting the field, but you are finally finished with the effort of guarding it. The meadow does not ask for permission to be empty at night. It does not fear the darkness net. It simply accepts the velvet silence gift. If a stray thought happens to drift across the surface of your mind, let it be like a firefly moving through the dark. It has no substance, it carries no command. It simply lights up for a heartbeat and then vanishes into the vast, cool air. You do not have to chase it. You do not have to capture it in a bottle to verify that it was there. You are the space where the light appears, and you are the space where it fades. You are the calm, infinite background of your own existence. Nothing can disturb this peace, for this peace was here long before you learned to worry, and it will remain here long after the last key has turned to dust. The iron is gone and the gates are wide. There is only the steady, rhythmic pulse of your breathing, a tide that washes in and out of the meadow without effort. Each inhalation is a gentle invitation to let go, and each exhalation is a surrender to the depth of the night. You have carried enough for one lifetime. You have been strong enough, and you have been careful enough. Tonight, you can set down the burden of being your own protector. The night itself is the only guardian you require, and it is vast, and it is kind, and it is already holding you in a way you never had to force. You are moving into a space where time does not matter. The ticking of the clock is just a sound in the distance, a rhythm that belongs to a world you have already left behind. Here, in the quiet, you are coming home to the one who does not need to build, who does not need to fix, and who does not need to know what happens next. You are simply arriving. You are becoming the silence that hears. The silence. You are the breath that realizes it is being breathed. It is a profound, deep return to the source of all things. Let your mind grow blurred and soft, like the silhouette of a tree, against a stardusted horizon. There is no need for focus. There is no need for understanding. Even the words of this night are drifting away, becoming part of the gentle wind that whispers through the grass. Everything is slowing down to the pace of the stars, and your heart is beating in time with the turning of the world. You are safe to let go of the last threads of vigilance. You are safe to drift into the deep, dark ocean of the night where there is no shore to guard. The iron is cold, but your heart is warm. The locks are open, but you are not exposed. You are protected by the very nature of your own being, which needs no metal to be whole. You have finally found the stillness that lies underneath every struggle, every question, and every fear. It is a quiet, steady radiance that does not change, regardless of the weather of your life. It is the peace of the meadow that knows the moon will rise and the sun will return, and that it is enough simply to exist. You are drifting now, further and further away from the need to manage the world, into the soft velvet, dark of true rest. There is nothing left to decide. There is no duty left to fulfill. There is only the weight of your body, the flow of your breath, and the endless, beautiful space of the night. You are entering the dream that has been waiting for you, a place where the keys have dissolved and the doors are already gone. What if the peace you have been guarding and the safety you have been building with such exhausted hands was never something you had to create, but something you were allowed to simply enter?